Hi, I'm Jeff from New York. Please like and subscribe.
Young Billionaire, Episode 96, Lalaine at the Hospital. Kara stood and did nothing while looking at Matthew. By the time Matthew let go of Spike, he had pulled out 5 or 6 of his teeth, which were now lying on the ground. Spike had lost all his bravado and was now terrified of Matthew. He jumped up from the ground and ran toward Kara with his tail between his legs.
Get out of my way!
Kara shouted and rushed over to her dog. She had wanted to rush over and save him when Matthew had been pulling Spike's teeth out, but Jerry had stopped her. Now she pushed him away and squatted down to look at Spike, whose head was starting to swell from being hit. When she opened his mouth, she could see that it was filled with blood and that a few of his teeth were missing.
Matthew!
Kara had raised Spike. She loved him and was furious with Matthew when she saw what he had done.
Look what you've done!
She shouted at him as he walked toward her. He wanted to settle things with Kara, but before he could say anything, she screamed at him.
I'm going to kill you!
Kara rushed toward Matthew, waving her fists at him.
Just get lost,
he said as he grabbed her hair and threw her to the ground. Woof, woof. Spike saw that his mistress was hurt, so he barked twice. Matthew looked at him and Spike shut his mouth, obediently putting his head down submissively.
One look at the smelly dog, and I can tell that its mistress is not a good person.
Matthew cursed at Kara and was about to kick her. Kara glared at him and said in a high-pitched voice,
Matthew, you mustn't kick me!
Really, why not?
Matthew was still angry, but he was starting to calm down. He was no longer as hot-headed and was so interested to hear why Kara thought he shouldn't hit her.
Because I'm pregnant.
Kara stood up from the ground. Hearing her words, Jerry was stupefied. He had been using protective measures all along. So how could Kara be pregnant? He sputtered.
Kara, you what?
Ha.
Matthew didn't care.
So what if you're pregnant?
He replied. He had never been a merciful person.
Matthew, you still want to hurt me? Then you need to know that the child I'm carrying isn't Jerry's. It's the child of Franklin Hayes, Sir Elijah Hayes' son.
When she said this, everyone gasped in shock. Whoa, Kara is having another man's baby. What a bitch. One man said in disgust. Another replied,
Franklin and Lucas Hayes are the sons of Sir Elijah Hayes, one of the richest men in the world. I don't understand how Kara managed to meet them.
His friend agreed. I knew it must be someone powerful if they dared to cheat with Jerry Adler's girlfriend. I couldn't think of anyone powerful enough in Los Angeles. But it turns out to be young Franklin Hayes. Jerry has no power at all compared to him. The chatter continued.
I've heard that last month, Franklin Hayes spent a week in Hollywood. He's friends with one of the great directors, I think J.J. Abrams. He stayed there for a week, and apparently during that time, more than 10 female Hollywood celebrities were seen going in and out of his hotel room. No one knows what they were doing.
Kara, you?
Jerry stuttered. His face was red and his voice was angry. His eyes were slightly trembling. Kara glared at him and came straight to the point. She said calmly,
Well, my plan was to be tactful and let you down gently. But today you were such a coward with Matthew. I realize that you clearly can't protect me. So why should I care about not embarrassing you? It's over, Jerry, you bitch.
Jerry raised his hand angrily. Kara egged him on.
Go on then. Try touching me if you really have the balls.
Jerry clenched his fists, but after a moment thought better to lower them. He knew that his family was no match for the Hayeses. Plus, Kara was already pregnant with Guy Hayes' child, so he absolutely couldn't touch her.
Ha, I knew it. Useless trash.
Kara proudly glared at Jerry, then looked at Matthew. She said,
Matthew, I've investigated your family. Although the Florento family is very famous in New York and among the whole country's upper-class society, as far as I know, your family's Florento enterprises can't compare to the Adler family business. What I don't understand is, why is your reputation so much greater than Jerry's?
Matthew's branch of the family was only involved with a few of the Florento family business enterprise, but it was clear why his family was so prestigious. Famous people like Kenneth Stokes were involved in the enterprise, running the East Coast division of the company. Kenneth had a huge influence in New York. As long as the Florento business enterprises had such well-respected and influential people working for them, the kudos would always rub off on Matthew's side of the family too. Kara asked,
Is it that your family are poor relations of the Florento family, but you've managed to build them into something respectable on social media?
She had heard that this was quite common now. There were plenty of examples of hoodlums from the ghettos in Los Angeles who had used social media to talk themselves into riches and respectability. Some were even starting charities to build their own reputations and become famous. Kara continued,
I think your family's just like that. In reality, you have no power or wealth, so what gives you the right to look down on me?
The more she spoke, the more she knew she was right, and now she had Franklin Hayes supporting her. She had nothing to fear from Matthew.
I know I'm right,
She said,
but I really can't recall. What kind of business is Florento Enterprises? At least Jerry has his own restaurant chain with delicious food and his live broadcast channels. Matthew, you just seem to party and chase women.
Onlookers heard what Kara was saying and voiced their own opinions. One said,
Damn, I think Kara's right. In fact, I'm not even sure that Florento Enterprises is that successful. In fact, I don't think it's even ranked in the top 10 companies in Los Angeles.
Do you think Matthew is afraid of Franklin Hayes?
asked his wife. He replied knowledgeably,
One is a mouse, and the other is the son of the richest man in America. If Franklin Avery wants to harm Matthew, I can't see anything stopping him.
All their friends agreed. Kara continued arrogantly,
Matthew, I know I'm right. And remember what you did. You actually pulled out Spike's teeth. If you don't want Franklin to know about this, then kneel down and apologize to me immediately.
Feeling that Franklin would support her, she felt very confident. Matthew smiled and slowly bent down. In a sarcastic voice, he said,
Oh, of course. Let me kneel down and apologize to you. Sure, no problem.
Kara laughed abruptly.
You still want to fight with me? Go on, kneel down in front of me right now.
She was waiting for a response from Matthew when all of a sudden, Kara felt the world spinning around her. She realized that she was being carried on Matthew's shoulder.
Put me down!
She shouted. The corner of Matthew's mouth hooked up into a carefree smile. He spun on the spot and whirled Kara around. She was screaming as she started feeling dizzy and shaken. Finally, Matthew stopped. Kara continued to shout,
Matthew, put me down. I'm going to tell Franklin all about this. You're in so much trouble.
If you want to sue me, go ahead.
Matthew replied. He wasn't worried about Franklin Hayes at all. As he spoke, he raised Kara high up in the air with his thick arms.
Matthew, what are you doing? I'm warning you. Remember, I'm still carrying Franklin Hayes' child. If anything happens to me, he'll kill you.
Kara was shouting. Matthew ignored her and threw her up into the air. Bang! Kara fell from a height of 2 meters onto the ground. A few of her ribs were broken. She was twisting on the ground, crying out loudly in pain. She was in agony. Matthew decided that he was wasting his time with these people. He wanted to get to the hospital, but first he needed to make sure that no one else was going to try to frame Lalaine for anything. At this moment, Sophia and Christine walked up to him. They were very worried about Lalaine's safety. Sophia said,
Matthew, I'm Lalaine's friend.
Christine said,
I'm Lalaine's manager. We want to go with you to the hospital to see her.
Okay.
Justin agreed. Then, seeing that Grace, Victoria, Elsa, and Sophia were all have the same number in the dress, he asked,
Sophia, did they want to go too?
She nodded. Grace, Victoria and Elsa were pale with anxiety. They lowered their heads and hardly dared to breathe. They were afraid that Sophia would say something about how they had bullied Lalaine.
Okay, we'll go together.
Matthew glared at Elsa. He thought,
Damn, this was the girl that framed Lalaine, but I've already punished her.
They took 2 cars to the Los Angeles General Hospital. When they got there, they spoke to Lalaine's doctor, who told them that she had received painkillers and she was no longer in pain. Her bite wounds had been bandaged, and she had been given a rabies vaccination. Fortunately, her injuries were all minor. She hadn't been as badly injured as Matthew had feared. She had also been given a sedative and she was sleeping. Matthew and the others sat with her quietly for 10 minutes before being told to leave by Matthew. He then sat beside her bed, quietly waiting for her to wake up. The next morning, when Lalaine slowly opened her eyes, she was still in a bit of a daze. She wondered,
Am I dead?
Then she noticed a man sleeping in a chair beside her bed. A few minutes later, Matthew woke up. Seeing that she had woken up, he became excited.
Lalaine, you're awake. That's wonderful. How are you feeling?
Matthew?
Lalaine was a little confused. She didn't know why he was here.
Yes, it's me.
He replied. Then he told her about how he had gone to the talent show the previous day and how she had been bitten by the dog. He continued.
Lalaine, don't worry. Last night I beat up everyone who bullied you. As for your teammate Elsa, that girl really deserves to die.
Lalaine nodded slightly. Her heart was filled with gratitude toward Matthew. If it wasn't for him, she was sure she would be dead. A few minutes later, a beautiful girl walked into the room and said,
Hello, Lalaine.
Then she turned to Matthew and said,
Matthew, the helicopter has arrived. We should fly to Washington now if we want to get there on time.
Matthew was supposed to attend a music contest in Washington that day. He had invited more than 10 popular singers from the entertainment industry to perform. He had already arranged to meet one of the female singers in a hotel room in Washington. And if they were late, they might forfeit their chances of winning. It was imperative that they get there on time.
You fly out there now. I need to stay in Los Angeles with Lalaine.
Although he said that he would stay, he wasn't completely sure that it was the right decision. The singer he had arranged to meet was a real stunner. Lalaine looked at him.
You should go.
She said with a smile. It was clear to her that Matthew wanted to go.
But
nothing.
She said assuredly.
I feel fine now. I'm not in pain. I just have a few small wounds from a dog's bite. It's nothing serious.
okay, you rest well in the hospital. Why don't you call Jeff and get him to come to Los Angeles to keep you company? And when you see him, give him a piece of my mind for not being here for you.
His words made Lalaine laugh. Matthew stood up and walked outside. He spotted Elsa and shouted at her.
Take good care of her. If anything happens to her, I will blame you. Do you hear me?
I heard you. I heard you.
Elsa replied timidly. Then Matthew said goodbye to Lalaine and left.